Oh, it says we're live. Let me make sure here. Okay. Hello, thanks to everyone who's joining us today. I'm Jennifer Dunlap with the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. All day long, we're celebrating the ExtraGive, an online day of giving thanks to the Lancaster County Community Foundation. They're helping to raise awareness and some much needed funding for mission work of nonprofits, fellow nonprofits, including the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. I'm going to share a little link here. Let me see if I can do that. Share a prize giveaway here. So thanks for joining us now for the live lunch hour with our guest, Christian Alexandersen. While we're chatting this hour, any donations received through extragive.org will enter you into a prize drawing for a Pennsylvania Parks and Forest passport full of information about all of the parks and forests to help you guide you on your way to seeing them all. There's a spot in the passports for a stamp at each trip you make along the way. And we're also giving away a purple lizard map to help kick off your journey. We'll be announcing the winner at the end of our lunch hour around 1 o'clock. So you might already know a little bit about Christian, as he's been guest blogging for us for some time now. He completed our See Them All challenge by visiting each of Pennsylvania's 121 state parks. And he's here with us today to share tips and stories from his journey. So please feel free to send any questions and comments in the chat box. So Christian, thanks so much for joining us today. As someone who hasn't been to all of Pennsylvania state parks yet, your story's really been inspiring. I was wondering if you can share a little bit about yourself and what led you to creating your own challenge of running a mile in each of the state parks.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me, Jen. I really appreciate it. So I started my journey back in September of 2019, September of 2020, when my wife and I visited our first state park ever, which was Little Buffalo State Park, which is about 25 minutes from where I live. And it was beautiful, and all the colors around the lake were just these bright yellows and reds, and it was stunning. And I was saying to my wife, like, I wonder how many state parks there are. And she's like, I don't know. And so I was like, maybe 50, 60. So I got on my phone, I looked, and there was 121. And I was just completely stunned by that. I was like, wow, that's incredible. And then right after that, I thought, I wonder if you could run a mile at every park, how long that would take. And my wife Abby was like, I don't know, probably a while. 121 parks, that probably takes a while. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting idea. I kind of just let it ruminate, but I wasn't really thinking much on it. And as it started to become winter, I wanted something to do where I could stay active and stay outside, so I wouldn't lose the progress I made when I was running in 2020. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do it. I'm not really sure. I kept kind of weighing the idea, and then in December, my grandfather passed away. His name was Robert Sauer, from COVID-19, and I think his death really solidified the idea of just going on an adventure. And I thought it's just something I feel like he would like. And he wasn't a runner, and he wasn't a big outdoors guy. He wasn't hiking all the time or anything like that. But me and him always traded stories about where he would tell me when he went to Africa, when they took a cruise with my grandmother to Alaska. I would tell him about when I went to Iceland and Cuba, and he always had stories to tell. And he always made traveling seem so fun. And when I think of traveling, I only think of overseas travel. I've never really considered, like, oh yeah, like the United States has so many great opportunities. And then all of a sudden, his death. I was just like, that's it. I'm going to do it. So January 2nd, 2021, I started what was called the 121 in 21 challenge.
That's awesome. I'm sure you felt him with you throughout the way as you had all of your crazy experiences.
Yeah, he was a great man. It was funny too, because when I first started, I didn't really want to tell anyone, because I tend to keep things close to the chest with things that are personal like that. I didn't even really tell my wife why I was doing it. I just kind of marketed to myself and to my friends and family as like, oh yeah, this is just something cool to do.
Yeah.
But it was, once I started hitting the trails and I was doing, the vast majority of these, especially in the early stages alone, that I was just like, I was thinking about him a lot. And, when you're running through the snow for 1 mile at every park, in, January, February, you have some time to think. So I spent a lot of time thinking about him.
Yeah, you picked kind of a rough time of year to go out on this challenge. How did you, think ahead about getting started, or did you prepare anything, or did you just kind of wing it and go for it? And then you're like, oh, I'm running in this now.
Yeah, I did exactly what you're not supposed to do. And I should start off by saying this: I am not a very good runner. I'm a big guy. I don't run fast. The farthest I've ever run before was I did a 10-mile race, trail race, and that was it. I wouldn't call myself outdoorsy. So when I went to my first park in September of 2020, and then the rest of 2021, all I was doing was going to parks, and I had a lot of lessons learned. And it wasn't, I love to prepare for things, but I just didn't prepare for this. It was just like, I would be like, all right, I'll find the trail, and I guess I'll figure it out as I go, and be able to do. I want to do all 121 parks in 1 year. I want to do it this year. So you'd have to do 4, 5, 6 a day just to be able to go to some of these
Yeah.
regions. So in order for me to do this, I was just my first day was just January 2nd. I was just like, oh, I'll just go to a park and figure it out. And then after that first couple of runs, it was four parks. I was like, oh, I'm woefully unprepared for this. I don't know trail markings. I didn't bring anything with me. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what parking areas were. I didn't know what roads were closed or open. I didn't know what fire roads were. I just didn't know anything. As somebody who's not an outdoorsy person, I just had to learn on the go. So
But you
that
survived, and
yes,
you're here to tell the tale
yeah,
and to give us tips so that we don't do the same.
yes, which is it's funny that I was so unprepared in the beginning, considering I prepare so much for so many things, but I think I was just like kind of more having fun with it. Like, oh, I'll just figure it out. And then when you go there and you're like, oh, it took me like 2 hours to do something that could have taken me 15 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
why didn't I just think about this beforehand? So, yeah, I recently wrote a blog about how to kind of prepare yourself for going outdoors. And it's you know checking the elevation maps. That's like number one. If you're I'm 36 years old, but I have the knees of like a 80-year-old, and I have like joints of like a newborn deer. So
Nice combination there.
yeah, it's not good at all. So you always have to make sure if you're when you're planning on a hike or a run or anything like that, like where you're going, how much elevation change there is, because that's going to make a huge impact on your fitness uh, and how enjoyable you're going to have a time hiking or running. Because if you don't want to run up and down hills and you're going to go up and down hills,
Right.
you're not going to be excited about that. Always bring water if you can. Bring a snack or bring food. Everything I was doing was only 1 mile. That was the whole thing. It was never more than a mile, or hardly ever more than a mile, because it was all about efficiency. So it was like get to a place, run, get a stamp in the passport book,
Yeah.
and then go and leave, go to the next park. So that's all it ever was. It was the same process over and over again. I'd say probably by 30 parks in, I think I was very good with my process, and by 60 parks in, I had it perfectly down. Like I knew exactly what to park. I knew to pack. I knew where to put in my car. I know where all the restrooms were at every park I was going to. I knew where the place to park, what trail, what elevation. After that, there were very few surprises, but I still had a lot of surprises along the way, despite how much, you know, Allegheny Islands is one that just kind of threw me for a loop that I was not prepared for. So
Yeah, well, from the photos that you shared on our Instagram, it seems like there's such an array of what is called a trail, from moss covered rocks. It could be a wood chip trail, or it could just be mud that you're running through.
mhm.
Like, how, I guess, as a runner, what kind of, is there trail running shoes that are
Y-
especially for?
Yeah, there's trail running shoes. I was running in Asics on the trails, and then also when I was at a park that I wasn't comfortable with the trails, or maybe they were just too beat up from snow or from whatever, I also ran on the road. Uh, so I wore Diodora's road shoes for those. But yeah, they have like these thick soles that are kind of nubby and knotty, so that they catch on things,
Okay.
or they give you good grip as you're running on things because you know, as much as I enjoy comfort, like I like, no, I'm not the sort of person to go like a week camping. So
Yeah.
it's like when you go to these places and you just kind of like, once again, not being prepared and not being an outdoorsy person, you're like, oh yeah, these trails will just be like perfect. Like they'll
Yeah.
just make these trails perfect for everyone. And then you go through and you're like, no, there's tons of rocks, there's roots, there's mud, there's out of nowhere you'll just like get lost and you'll just like stop for a second and be like, okay, you have to take some time, figure this out, but it was always trying to stay a couple steps ahead of the trail.
Right. Well, I think that that's what's so great about our parks and forests is that they are so natural. They are so rustic, and those are the only places really that people can go to get back to
Mhm.
nature in that way. So, but when you were running at Allegheny Island, you were barefoot for part of it, right? Because it
Yeah,
was like pure mud. Like, do we have a photo of that
yeah.
you can
So
show?
I'll show
'Cause
you.
that's a pretty awesome story.
So this was my reaction when I first arrived, because I found out once you got there. Uh, First of all, when I was doing research on the park, there's no land access. There's no boats to take you there. There's no ferry service. It's literally two islands in the middle of the Allegheny River. So I had to. So my friend Adam Bricker and I drove from Harrisburg to Pittsburgh, and we hit a bunch of parks. I think we hit 7 parks that weekend, and I had to bring my kayak to the island. So then, when I got there, there's no trails. There's no, they're two completely undeveloped islands with no trails and nothing to provide any sort of area to run. So what I found on one of the smaller island, I guess more north, I found just a beach of just mud.
Mud beach, yeah.
That's all it was, and it was, yeah. So it was the slipperiest mud I've ever felt in my entire life. It was ridiculous. It's nothing like I've ever experienced before. Like the moment you stand in it, you sink in 3 inches, but then you automatically want to slip and fall. So I had I think what I counted was 40 steps back and forth to the beach, and I had to do a mile. So it took me 44 minutes to march back and forth on this
Oh my
beach.
gosh.
And all the while, there were waves from boats that were passing by that almost swept my kayak into the middle of the river. And it was just it was a true unadulterated nightmare.
I mean,
Uh,
was this a moment where you were like, okay, why am I doing this? And maybe it's time to call it quits? Or
it
did
was
this like fuel you to do
no,
more?
no, it was the only. I stopped about a quarter of the way, and I got back in my kayak and I went around the island because between the two islands there's a big drop off. So and that you can't go down. You have to use a lock system. So I actually went around the island to try anything. Please God, let me find some little slice of land that I can do. Nothing. Nothing whatsoever. There was a family with 2 boats parked at the edge, and they were just diving off the one area, and that's all there was. And then so I was like, all right, I got to take my medicine. So I went back around, parked my boat, and then just marched for. I ran for the first quarter mile, and then marched for the last 3/4 of a mile, and it was so absolutely brutal. It's nothing like I've ever experienced before. That was the closest I ever came to quitting because I was just like, who cares? Like this is this is so ridiculous. Why am I doing this? It doesn't really matter. Nobody's gonna really care. It's not like, I get some big giant award at the end of this where, they're cheering me on. So I was like, just stop, just go home. And
Right.
I remembered the thing that kind of saved me through a lot of times where I had difficult times during these runs, which is you chose this. Like
Yeah.
nobody made me go do this. I decided to go do this, which means that if something is tough, that means I have to put my big boy pants on and go. So like that's what it was. It was just like, all right, like grin and bear it, let's go. So that's what it was
That's insane.
yeah, for 44 minutes.
Nice.
Oh, I should also show you real quick. Let's see. This this incredible man is my grandfather. That is Robert Sauer. At my wedding with my wife Abby, who's amazing.
That's a great picture.
Yeah, I was actually looking for photos for him, and so many of them were my parents have because they're older and they're in photo albums. But I remember that we have this one. And I just love his expression. I mean, you could see it. He's a man filled with so much joy for his family.
Yeah,
So it was
you
great.
can see it.
Yeah. Oh, and then we were talking about kind of some tough trails.
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah,
just
like is that a trail? Would one
yeah.
know that that's the trail?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like if you have no experience in something, especially with me with like trail running. I've only been trail running a couple of years, but if it's not something you spend time doing, then you're just surprised by things. So it's like you look at these routes and you're like, man, those things could snap an ankle so quick. And then this was, I think, my second time out. I think this was in February. My mom, by the way, if my mom is listening, I'd like to say thank you for joining us, and I love you. And if my wife is joining us, I'd like to say thank you, and I love you as well. And this is just like one of those times my mom always jokes that like you're always smiling, like this looks terrible. Like who wants to be running in the snow? Like, I guess I do. So I kind of always love that. This is at Ohio Pile. This is Ferncliff Trail, and the photo doesn't really give any depth to it, but it's just, I mean, they're just jagged rocks everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're wet, and you just don't know what your footing is going to be, or if you're going to make it. And like I said, I'm a big guy, so I mean, one roll over and my ankle is kind of done for. So you just have to be careful. And I think this one was at Ricketts Glen, and this one was just brutal because it was the last one of the day. I think it was number 5 for me that day, and I was just wanted a nice, fun, easy trail. And of course, that's not what I found. I found like a tough slug the whole way. Oh, this is a good one too. I always love finding these when you're just running because you're like, oh, good, I'm about to trash my shoes for the day, which makes it fun. You're just like, nobody ever tells a story about how great it is to go to the beach. The best stories are always when things go wrong, which is what I love. I like when things go wrong and when things are tough and when things suck and you don't want to do them, because it makes for a better story. So it's just like, what's better? I went for a nice run today, or like, oh yeah, I was like up to my knees in mud because I had to kayak to an island for it.
Yeah.
There you go. There's another good one too.
Nice.
I think this was towards the end. I don't know what it is. Oh yeah. So this is Denton Hill. Denton Hill State Park is hilarious because it's like an old ski resort that no longer works.
Okay.
So there's nothing there. So there's no trails really. There's no facilities. There's no park staff. Half the gate was closed when I got there, and then so my incredible wife Abby just had to read a book in the car while I went running up this hill. There you go. Oh, and of course, Buchanan's birthplace. This park is so tiny. So to run a mile, I just ran around Buchanan's birthplace monument like 10 times.
And did people see you doing that?
Yeah, I always look like a crazy person during this. Like anyone who saw me thought I was probably thought there was something weird, because it's not like I was running and then they saw me running for like, I ran by them in like an hour. I came back like a good long run. Instead, I was just running past, like they could see me. Yeah, they could see me get in the car or get out of the car, stretch, run for 15 minutes, or whatever 1 mile is, and then get back in my car. Like they had to think something was very odd about that, which is fine. Upper Pine Bottom State Park is another great example too, because it's just, if you blink, you drive past it, and it's like an acre. It's so tiny. So I got out of my car took my shirt off to get ready to run, and there was a guy fishing. And the second I took my shirt off and just started running laps around the parking lot, he just packed up his stuff and went. He was just like, "Man, I don't know what this guy's up to."
Did
So
not trust what you were up to.
no, I totally get it. If I just saw somebody do that too, I'd be freaked out by it. Oh, and there's a good one.
Oh, that's a
But,
nice happy smile. All the
yeah,
others, it's like you can gauge the level of by the eyebrow raise. It's like that's
yeah.
how tough
That's the
that
thing
trail is.
is like this journey that I went on. Uh, this kind of adventure I set for myself, like fundamentally shifted what I think about travel. It's what I think about Pennsylvania. It fundamentally shifted kind of my whole perspective on things because like I said in the beginning, you have to leave America to travel. Like that's traveling.
Right.
And obviously with COVID, that shut everything down. I had my fourth trip to Iceland planned, and that shut everything down. But this changed everything. I realized there's so much in this state, and not only so much in this state, but there's so many parks, there's so many forests. Like as somebody who couldn't care less about the outdoors, I that's all I care about now. I'm
Yeah.
broadcasting, if you will, from Shenandoah National Park by myself. I just came to hike for 4 days, which is if you would have told me that a year ago, that wouldn't make any sense. That's nuts. But that's
Yeah.
what I'm doing. Like that's how I'm spending my time. Is that
So
I'm
this has
like,
been like a really life-changing
yes,
thing for you. And you have plans to go back and spend more time in the Pennsylvania state parks. Is that right?
yeah. I
To
joke
kind of
that
get to see more of
yeah,
them than
yeah, I joke that, the way I did it isn't the way other people should see the parks. Like it was literally every single time it was get out, run a mile, get back in, drive 45 minutes, run for a mile, 45-minute drive, run for a mile. That's not the way you should see parks.
yeah.
Like if there is, and also I chose like easy trails. I didn't want to run up super high elevation. I didn't want to do these really, really tough runs because I had to do 7 in a day. So I was just like, all right, let's do flat spaces. So if there was a waterfall that was like a mile and a half in to a hike or to a trail, I'd never see it. Like,
Okay.
because I just wanted to do my mile and go about my way. But now, now that I have time, I've already been back to 10 parks, I think,
Okay.
10, 15 parks already. I finished, I ran a mile in every park in 224 days. I think it was August 13th was my last park, which was Little Buffalo, which is where I kind of started the whole idea. But now that I'm going back, there's just like so much to see. When you have time, when you actually spend more than 15 minutes in a park, you
Yeah.
just realize how much there is. There's beaches and meadows and mountains and forests and old growth forests and I mean there's everything. There's everything there could be. There's just like it's mind-boggling how much we have in the state that not enough people really take advantage of.
Yeah. Can you share with us some of your favorite like sites that you have seen, like waterfalls or overlooks that you enjoyed?
Yeah, and kind of the part of this is that even as I prepared more and more and understood where I was going to run, I still allow myself to be surprised by things. Like I didn't want to see photos of places before I went. I wanted to
Right.
still. So Ohio Pile, which is the first trip my wife joined me on, we would I think we did I think 12, 11 or 12 parks in a weekend. And Ohio Pile was her first park. And she was like, "Oh man,
Oh,
is every
wow.
place like this?" And I'm like, "No, this is not like a normal, like this is a very unique park. Like this
Yeah.
is, uh, you know, I think a lot of people would say like any place there's like waterfalls or any place that there's like you would choose your Presque Isles and your Ohio Piles, your Ricketts Glen, stuff like that. But my favorite park was Cook Forest. And like I said, I spent no more time there than I spent any other park, and it was just like it was eye opening. You walk in, I ran on this trail, and it's just this beautiful, this dark soil, and pine needles covering the trail, and you're surrounded by these giant trees, and ferns were everywhere. I love ferns, and the ferns were everywhere, and and it was right next to the road. Like that's how incredible it is. It's just like there's cars like 10 feet that way,
Yeah.
and it didn't matter. It just completely like you were in a different world. And then when by the time I hit my half mile to run back, uh, that's where like the old growth forest started, and it was just like you open it up. It's just awe inspiring. It's incredible.
And that's going to be your next blog post coming out on PPFF's website coming out soon to tell everyone more about Cook Forest. So
Yeah, I never understood people that were like I've read John Muir and I've read the authors who talked about what they see in nature, and I just never understood it. And then you go to these places and you're like, okay, like I get it. I know what Thoreau was talking about.
yeah, we're so lucky to have so many places. I mean, 121 parks right here in Pennsylvania. They're all right here in our own backyard, but
Yeah,
so many of us haven't experienced them yet. So
absolutely. I mean, I went to zero. I lived here for 8 years. I went to zero parks, and then I went to all of them in 224 days. So it's like, it's almost like I joke that it's almost like waking up and learning a different language because it was like I knew nothing and now I know so much about all these parks, and now I'm just constantly nagging and annoying people about, oh, you're traveling, where are you going? Oh, you should check out this park, or are you going over here? Oh, you should definitely, oh, you're in Philadelphia today. Check out Benjamin Rush or go by Evansburg. They have great trail system. It's like, oh, I'm going to Scranton. It's like going to Scranton. Fine, you should go. It's just it's so annoying now, but it's like that's all I really talk about. It's like it's
time to
just so
write a book,
interesting.
I think.
Yeah, yeah, 15 minutes in every park. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, also when you were talking about, there's something for everybody. There's, it might be a little bit of a drive, but I mean, if you want to, if you want to feel the wilderness, if you're in Harrisburg, drive to World's End, which also one of my favorite state
Yeah.
parks. Like, it's rushing, beautiful water, these rock formations, these boulders, and this beautiful, beautiful forest. And then it's just like, oh, I want to go to a beach. It's like, go to Presque Isle. It's right.
Yeah.
It's like right in Erie, or it's like you want to see a waterfall without having to drive or really have to go anywhere. Go to Ohio Pile. It's right in the middle of a town. Like it's legitimately in the middle of a town, and it's right there. It's like no matter what you're into, if you're into hiking, biking, kayaking, and fishing, we have it all. I mean, it's just finding where you want to go. But there's nowhere in the state that you can't find a great park.
Well, since you mentioned like Ohio Pile is, right in the middle of the town, that's one of the posts you did for us recently were about some of the small towns that you visited while you were out. And do you want to share with us a little bit about the ones that you enjoyed the most or kind of funny events or things that you ran into?
Yeah. So if for the first 60 of these, I did them by myself. So I just go for a weekend, or I usually I wake up at 5, 6 in the morning, go drive 2 hours, run 5 parks, and then come back home. So I'd still be able to do things, and then I realized once you start getting way out west, once you start getting near Pittsburgh, once you start getting near Philly, Scranton, Erie, you just have to do weekend trips. So I started inviting my wife Abby, who at first was skeptical because it would just be like, if there's something cool here, we can't stop. Like I would just tell her, like, if there's something really great here, we can't stop because it's 15 minutes drive,
That's
15 minutes
not
drive.
fair. That's
No,
not
it's not.
fun.
No, that's what. So I warned her ahead of time. So she was like, okay, I totally get it. I totally understand. So she would kind of hang out in the car or go for a quick walk or read a book. Uh, and but that's not really fair. Like you said, it's not really. So I started trying to make them a bit. And my great friend Adam Bricker came with me for I think like 25 of these too. I think Abby came for 40 and Adam Bricker came for 25. And so when you're doing weekend trips, you're just going to end up in a small town. Like if you're in these kind of far away places, no matter what, you're just going to be somewhere, and you kind of have to find your own fun. So a lot of people know about like Wellsboro, which is right near the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon, which is Leonard Harrison and Colton Point, and it's just awesome. They had a D&D shop, which is where they sold like dice and Dungeons and Dragons and board games and stuff like that. I had an incredible time. The weekend after I finished running the parks, after all it was all done and my body was all beat up and I was tired, I didn't want to do anything. My parents came up that weekend. I took them to state parks.
Nice.
Like, and I took them to Colton Point. I took them to Leonard Harrison. Like, Wellsboro is just great, fun, small, great little restaurants. The historic hotel there is beautiful. I stayed there before, which is awesome. Also, Ohio Pile. I didn't get to spend enough time in, but I think that was a cool little funky town. And then my favorite, I don't know why I have such an affinity for this place, but counter sport.
Mhm.
There's something about counter sport that just I love it. I was going. Oh, my Abby came with me for that trip, and I was just like, "Can we buy a house here? Like, I know this is silly, and I know you'll say no, and there's no real good reason, but let's just live here." And she was like, "Well, like no, right? Like no, because we live 3 hours from here." I was like, I know, and I get it, and I totally get it. But let's just like live here. Let's just drop everything and live here where there's no Wi-Fi, and there's an Elliot Ness museum and a couple good restaurants. Like, let's just do it. And she's like, no. And I'm like, good point. We should do it.
But she is on board for the camper, right? That's
Yes,
still okay.
yes. That's one of the coolest things to come out of this. My wife, by no means an outdoorsy person, not a hiker, not a runner, does enjoy camping, hates spiders, so that automatically kind of goes against things. But on our last trip together for these runs, I kind of said to her, I, I think we should get a camper. And she said yes. And she didn't say, like, I don't know, maybe we should think about it, or, maybe if we price things out, how much does that cost? She was like, yes. And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah, I think we should definitely do that. So it's like,
That's awesome.
she likes to weigh things, especially before big purchases, like a rational, normal person, as opposed to me who wants to jump headfirst into buying property in counter sport. Uh, so she was like, yes. And the good part is too, as my trips kind of changed, as these running trips changed, she always drove my car, and she got a lot more enjoyment out of it because she felt more proactive in the process.
Mm.
Like she was taking a big mental load off my back by letting me sit for an hour between runs and not have to, like, where are we going to stop and go do this? Where are we going to stop and do that? Or just mentally worry about driving. I mean, she was just so phenomenal about that. That she was a trooper. I mean, she just took all these trips. She just married a crazy person and was like, "Oh, I'm going to run at every park in a year." And she was like, "Cool, like, let's go." So yeah, so the camper's a big thing. Apparently, prices are very crazy right now for
Yeah.
campers.
Yeah.
So they are pretty tough. I think the lowest we saw that I think that I could find would be like 75. That's no good. We're still paying
Yeah.
off the house.
The pandemic got everyone to get back outdoors, and um like outdoor equipment, campers, everything is just
Yeah,
blown up.
I'll pick it up in 2 years when people get bored.
There you go.
When people start traveling internationally again, and they're like, COVID never happened, and then I'll get their camper for like
There
$50,000 off. That's my plan.
you go. Let me share our little. We have our prizes here. So anyone that's whoop, how do I put them in my camera? We have a purple lizard map, and we have the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest passport that we will be drawing a name for anyone who's donating during this hour at extragive.org for the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. And we'll be announcing the winner hopefully at the end of our session here today. I'll have Pam from our staff. Pam will send me a name to announce. So
If I could chime in too,
Mhm.
that a big part of like me traveling. I'm a big fan of checklists. There's just something about them that's very rewarding, and to check something off, and the stamp book is like the greatest feeling in the world when you go to a stamp and you're like, oh, I wonder where there's a stamp, and then you go to the park office and you get it, and it's like a
Yeah.
freshly well done stamp, and you put it in your book. It's just so great. I went to every park, but I am now 4 shy of a complete book, because
Oh, we'll have to get those for you. We'll have to get the stamp for you.
don't I've already taken care of it. I wrote originally 2 weeks ago. I was down 20. I was missing 20 stamps, and I wrote to every single park,
Okay.
and now 16 have written back to me. Apparently, one I didn't get the address right, which I don't know if it's true. I checked those things pretty thoroughly. But now I'm 4 stamps shy, and
I
I'm
know where you can
so
find the right address. We can help you with that.
yeah. So I'm 4 shy, and I'm so excited about it. Like
Yeah,
I get these letters, I'm opening them. I'm like, I got it. I'm getting the last one.
they're really awesome books. I mean, it's full of information about each park and forest. So, if you want to kind of choose, be selective about which
Hmm.
ones you want to get to first, that's a great way to start. And then for anyone out there that's listening that is close to, completing their journey of seeing all 121, we give them this Cinemal bandana that has like the checklist of all the state parks too. So anyone out there who has completed seeing them all, please let us know, and we'd be happy to get you one of these. And we'd love to hear your story too. So, and you have yours, right, Christian? I think you said you framed yours.
Yeah, I
A lot
do.
of people hang them up.
Yeah, it's too nice to go around my big giant head. So I wanted to have it as a keepsake of going to see it. And actually, there's been a couple people. One in particular has reached out about uh, kind of forming a group for all the people that have seen them. For all the people that have seen all the parks, so that's something I'm kind of helping out with, or at least talking about, which I think is great. I think it's like the more people you get together, the more advocates you have, which just means
Right.
the more you're going to raise money for parks and for forests. So
Right. Yeah, and we have a page on the PPFF website for the Seen 'em All Challenge folks. So anyone who is interested in sharing their story, we'll put them on there. So keep us posted about who you meet,
yeah, absolutely.
who's interested in that. Let's see here. I wonder if we have any questions. I think we have something in the chat box.
Ooh.
Oh, okay. So this is a question from our staff. Now that you've been to all the state parks, are you going to run a mile in all 20 state forests? Can we challenge you for a new challenge?
Don't do this. I put too many
And
miles on my car
winter's
already.
coming, which seems to be the perfect time to start.
Well, it's funny too because my original idea back in 2020 was like, oh, I was like 20 state forests. Just do a 5K in every forest. I was like 5K in every forest. That kind of sounds like that's got a certain flow to it. And I was just like, well, no, like that's no, you're gonna die if you try to do that because you're so like I was, I wasn't at the greatest running space at that time, but I was just like a mile sounds a little bit a lot more doable. So maybe I wouldn't. I mean, do the parks I mean, do the forests encompass the parks? Because then,
A lot of
then
really,
technically,
yeah, a lot of really close.
yeah.
You could
So I
kind of.
mean, I feel like if I cross some boundaries, I think I might have already
Oh no,
checked
that
up.
doesn't count. No, no,
No,
no.
no.
Come on,
I
we
had to
need
try.
more blog material.
Yeah, yeah. They also have stamps for every forest district too. So in
Right.
addition to the 121 parks you get for the state forest district, I now have all 20. I got my last stamp I think on Tuesday,
Thanks.
which is pretty great,
Nice.
satisfying.
Yeah. And we have Dale says, such great information. Way to go, Christian.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny because the reaction I got from 90% of the people that I told about this, whether I was just running next to them or, there was a park ranger I was looking for a stamp or anybody really, a hot dog vendor outside of someplace I was getting food at, they were just like, "Oh yeah, what are you doing here?" I was like, "Oh, I'm running a mile in every state park and I'm trying to do it as fast as I can." And they're like, "All right." Like that's pretty weird. I mean, it's the same reaction I got from everyone, family, friends, because there's no that's not how you experience the outdoors. Like you want to take your time and you want to breathe in the air and really see everything and check out those waterfalls and go for long hikes. But I was just like, yeah, this is the way I want to try it. And like my whole goal was like I did want to see how fast I could do it,
Okay.
because this sounds silly, but I want to set a good time for the next person. Like if there was somebody who came after me that was like, "Oh, I want to see how fast I can run these," like you could do this. Like if you really like, if you had somebody driving and you made sure you were there during all operating hours and you didn't try to do anything at night, you could probably do this in 2 weeks. And it took me 7.5 months. But like if you push yourself, you could do this pretty easy. It's just the driving. It's 7,500. I drove 7,500 miles
Wow.
uh, for 121 miles of running, which is crazy. I once drove 900 miles for one park and then went home. I drove 450 one way, 450 the other way, just for one park, which is
So there's like multiple challenges within your challenge. How fast
something
can
like
you
that.
drive? How fast can you run?
I definitely hit some record speeds at some points. It was never for the running. It's just
We're not going to encourage the
no, of
dangerous
course not.
driving to
No,
get to the
no.
state parks.
I'm from New Jersey, so it doesn't. It's mildly okay then. But I drove to Ryerson Station for work out near Pittsburgh, and then drove back. So after I was done with work, I went drove down an hour, ran, and then drove back. And it was just that park that one day, and it's this southwestmost park. It's a nice park.
So, any of your friends that went with you, um, are they at all considering going to all of them now, or were they just along to like help
Well,
support you in your effort?
the two friends that joined me, I always felt, I ran the first 60 by myself, not because I didn't want people, but because I didn't want to. I didn't want to put somebody in the position of just being like, well, no, like, why would I do that? Because running a mile, like, if you run 1 mile at 7 parks in one day, it's not like running 7 miles. You have no rhythm, you have no flow, your body starts to ache instantly. Like, so, like, when you run 5, 6, 7 miles at a time, your first mile is always the worst. Like, you kind of get your breath on you, and you're like, okay, this is the pace I want to set. This is how far. This is how my legs are feeling. But you keep having to reset over and over and over again. So every mile is like the worst new mile.
Okay.
So I didn't want to like ask somebody to do that with me. Like I felt really bad. Like, oh, do you want to go run and have like a really tough day on your body, or do it for a weekend? Like, do you want to run 7 today and do 5 tomorrow? Because most people would be like, no, that sounds ridiculous. But
you can get a bandana.
it's true. Yeah. But I had my awesome friend Adam Bricker join me for I think 25 or 26 of them. He was there when I did Allegheny Islands, but he couldn't go because I only brought one kayak, so he had to hang out in the car for like an hour, which I still feel so bad for. But me and him talk about this all the time. I mean, it's I love him. He's an amazing friend, and just to be like, this was just such a fun little thing for us too. Like, he wasn't there for everything, but he was there for 25 parks, which is 3 separate full weekend trips.
Wow.
That he went on with me. So we talked about doing maybe something in the future. I'm not really sure yet. He also mentioned Delaware only has 18 parks, so we could probably finish that in a weekend. So by the way, let me state this unequivocally. There's no chance I'm running it at every state park in America. There's nothing like that's never going to happen because that would cost too much money and take too much time. It'd be ridiculous. So I'm not doing that.
But you thought about it. It seems the thought has crossed your mind. Obviously,
numerically speaking, I looked at the total number and I was like, that's like 25 years. Like that's a lot. And that's also like, oh yeah, I'm taking vacation time to go run one. I just couldn't. You can't justify it. Delaware I could justify.
Well, but I feel like Abby and Adam deserve something for all of their work. So have you done anything nice for them?
Lots of hugs and kisses, lots of support.
Come on, we want presents and
I've very much I've shown my appreciation to my wife because it's just above and beyond,
Yeah.
That this is not what she signed up for when she was like, I do. Like, she didn't say I do.
Marriage, right?
No, she didn't say like I do, and want to drive you for 10 hours to go run at these parks over a weekend. Like, that wasn't part of it, but she did it, and she was amazing the whole time. And she very much understood the assignment, where she was just like, I know, I get it. If there's something cool, we're not going to see it. And I was just, but then, because she was so great with it, I started making the trips longer and being like, all right, well, then we'll go to this museum, or we'll check out this recreation center, or we'll go to this or go to that. And Adam, funny enough, my wife and Adam are both not outdoorsy people. So Adam, I doubt he's going to be going to a lot more parks, but I also went with another friend of mine who went with, I think it was six parks with me, 6 or 7. And his name is Wes Robinson, and he works for DCNR. For the park system, so if he's going to be going to a bunch. I can
Does he know that? Or you're just volunteering him?
He will just have to for work, regardless.
Nice. So we have a good question here from maybe this is family member Lynn Alexandersen.
That's my mother.
Mama. Great accomplishment. We're so proud of you. And with all this said and done, would you do it over again?
Yes, I do it. I very much so. I actually joked to, thank you, Mom, I love you for the question. I joked to Abby, I was like, maybe I'll just do it again. Like, maybe I'll just run it back. Like, maybe I'll just do it again. And she like, she's very supportive and she's great, but she's just like, oh man, like, come on. Are we really gonna do this again? Because I'm like, I can do it faster. was like, I think I could do it 150 days. And she was just like the last time. All right, sure. Like that's what you want to do. I didn't know how I'd feel when I was done. Like, I didn't know if I would be like really happy that it was over, or if I was gonna kind of wish I could still keep doing it again. And I haven't run for 3 months because I had so many fun problems because I went from not running a lot to running these weird, weekend miles. So like my knees and ankles were completely shot. All of a sudden I started getting shin splints, which never happened before.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end, it was just like I was so relieved to be done. But then thinking back on it now, I really miss it. Like there was a I don't know. There's something special about it. Just being able to head out and go see the state you knew nothing about.
Yeah.
I definitely do it again. Thank you, Mom. Oh, and I should show you too, because there's so many places that I got to see that were like, oh wait, here's a so there was my first park, by the way. Ironically enough, I didn't even plan it this way. The first park I went to was Mont Alto State Park, which is the first park in Pennsylvania, first state park. So that just so happened to go very well for me. Oh yeah, Big Spring State Park. I got lost in the snow and I went almost 2 miles and I was in the wrong direction. So that was a fun journey. Hold on, and then I'll bring up. So here's my amazing wife Abby.
Shout out to Abby.
Yeah, she that trip was that was really fun. We stayed at an A-frame house from Airbnb that was just beautiful. That was like 25 minutes away from like 10 parks out in the middle of nowhere. And then my awesome friend Adam Bricker. That was our last trip together. We went to Pittsburgh. That was the Pittsburgh region. That was Allegheny Islands, and this is the point, which I'm still waiting on a stamp for, by the way. I don't know if they
There,
have.
Point State Park, folks.
Yeah, get on
You're
that.
watching.
Allegheny Islands. I don't know if they have a stamp because there's no buildings on the islands, but if they do, I want that one too. And there's Wes Robinson. Wes, like I said, works for DCNR, and he was such a fun person to be around for the day because it was just like I didn't expect him to run with me because I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go for a run. He's like, oh no, I'm going with you. I'm like, oh, are you? He's like, yeah, I can do that. 1 mile, that's no problem. I'm like, okay, let's go. So then we just spent the day like 10 hours just running around, which is great. And then so, I tell a lot of stories about how brutal or about how tough, some of the things were, but there was also like kind of spectacular, views and beauty you get to see. This is the top of Heiner View. This is about 20, 30 feet from the big CCC statue, which I love. Anything to do with the Civilian Conservation Corps, I'm obsessed with. So, this was just another thing. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was like, oh, Heiner View, like, all right, I'll go check that. I'll check that out. And I talked to a park ranger that was at, I think it's called Little Pine State Park, something like that. And he said to me, oh, where are you going next? And I told him, and he goes, oh, there might be paragliders out today. I was like, paragliders? Why? And this is the platform that paragliders used at Heiner View, and it's just
Oh,
spectacular.
okay. So they run out there and like
Yeah, yeah. They just it was too windy that day. It turned out to be too windy, but it was just like when you don't expect anything and you turn the corner and you see this, it's just
yeah, that's gorgeous.
it makes you really appreciate Pennsylvania. And then so this is, I believe, Cook Forest, which is kind of a list, or Cook Forest and McCall's Dam. Both of them are just spectacular. Just the color and the shades and how bright and vibrant everything is. It's incredible. I love it so much. And this is like probably the most recognizable state park, Kinzu Bridge. And I actually went there. This is where I took my parents to the weekend after I was done running. I just wanted them to see this because it's just so incredible. Everything to see. The Pennsylvania Wilds is like my new home away from home. Just going up there, there's just so many incredible things to see. So many awesome people to talk to. Just they're super helpful, and anyone with the park system is just all they want to do is help, and they just go, oh, what are you doing here today? Are you hiking this trail? Oh, you should check this out. Just everything. The park system is just so great. Can't remember. I remember I was with Abby for this trail, but it's right next to a lake, and you're running. And it's just this was the first trail, first park of the day, and it's just beautiful. It's just something you don't get to see if you're not going to the state parks. This one is Cook Forest. As you can see to the right side, that's where so like 20 feet away is where the road is, and you can see the guardrail a little bit. And to the left, there's actually a suspension bridge, like Indiana Jones, which is awesome. I ran over that and then ran back just because I wanted to say I could run over a suspension bridge. But it's these places are just so special and so beautiful. And if I live in Harrisburg, or Enola, if I would never know about this place if I didn't do what I did. I would have no idea how incredible Cook Forest is, and how they have these Indian cabins you could rent, and then how there's suspension bridges and an old growth forest. They call it a
Yeah.
forest cathedral. Like, you
Yeah.
don't know these things until you take the time out. Oh, and there's a tough trail. But if you don't take the time, you're not going to be able to experience the wonder that is nature.
Yes, it is so true. Let me see if we have any other questions here.
Maybe more of my family members could chime in.
Let's see here. Do a little reminder about our prize drawing here. So for anyone who donates during this time period, we're going to draw a name here in a few minutes for Pennsylvania Passport Book and Purple Lizard map to get you started on going to see as many parks as you'd like to. If you're feeling up to it, all 121
Take your time.
24s. Yes, you don't have to do them all in a year. But you are kind of challenging everyone, Christian, by this.
Yeah, I mean,
setting a time frame. And
I'm fortunate enough to know a few and friends with a few ultra runners who can run 100 miles. Like, they just go run 100 miles, and that's not that tough for them anymore. So now they're running 240 miles. There's these races through the mountains of Tennessee, the Barkley marathons that are wild. There's all these races. I have someone I knew just from Instagram that I became friends with online, Mike Gagliardi, used Gags, and he runs all these ultra marathons. And when you realize that he's running when you're running I ran 121 miles in 224 days.
Yeah.
And he does it in a day. You're just like, what's the end? Like how far can people push themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, people like Courtney Dowalter, who's running, the Moab 240, I think is 240 miles. They're just days and days of not sleeping and running.
So I wonder if anyone has done that, where they've ran every state park.
I don't know. It's just in the country.
It's not even. It's not even possible.
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I don't know if there's many people, if any, that have run at every state park. Like, I don't know, because that's not usually a goal that you think of.
Right.
Like, I was thinking, because I was trying to go on a couple of websites, and I was trying to find if anyone ran at every state park, because I was like, being the second to do something is pretty cool, but being the first to do something is very cool. So I was just like, I didn't find anything. I didn't find any fastest known times or anything like that. So I don't know. But if I did it in 224, a moderate runner can do this in less than 200.
Well, I did recently learn that there's at least one, I think there's more than one, but a dog that has completed all 121 parks. So
well, that's cool. Incredible, and I want to be friends with that dog. It must have been rough.
I think he's Instagram famous, so
there you go.
You can find him there.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, before we leave everyone today, is there any words of advice or encouragement that you want to offer folks to get out there and see all of these beautiful places in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, there's a couple points. I've brought them up before, but I think it's worthwhile to mention them again. There is something for everybody. If you're not an outdoorsy person, it's okay. if you want to like a rail trail, if you want a paved path, they got it. If you want to hike up rock scrambles and you want to get to the top of a mountain, they got it. You want to fly fish, kayak, bike, mountain bike, run. There's something out there for you. And I think the more people that go to these parks, the more advocates there are that can tell people not only how important these parks are, but making sure that they're properly funded, which is certainly an issue. I think there's, the Pennsylvania State Park System does incredible things with the amount of money it has. We can only imagine if they were given more funding. So, get out there, plan your trip properly, give yourself a little bit of time, go walk the extra half mile to the waterfall, or spend that extra 2 hours, in the sunrise or the sunset. Like, spend the time to have an adventure, because who knows how long we're here for. So take every moment you can to have fun and have a journey.
Those are great words of advice to get out there. And thank you for, mentioning about the much needed funding, for our state parks and forests. There is a $1.4 billion need for infrastructure in our parks and forests right now.
Yes.
And the funds being raised today through the ExtraGive will help the stewardship efforts of our 48 chapters of all volunteer friends groups who do work in these various parks and forests throughout our state. So thank you for anyone who has donated today. We do have a winner for our Parks and Forest passport and our Purple Lizard map. It is Christine Junkins. So Christine, thank you so much for joining us for lunch hour. We will get you your prize. For anyone else who would like to get a Park and Forest passport, they are on our website at paparksandforest.org, our website store. So check them out there. They're a great holiday gift item. And stick around with us for the rest of the day. We have another live chat coming up at 4 p.m. for the happy hour, where New Trail Brewing will be joining us to talk about their state park series beers that they're doing that benefit park projects. So I just want to say thanks again to everyone. And Christian, thank you so much for being such a great advocate for the parks and forests, sharing with us all of this information and continuing with us as a guest blogger. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jen. I appreciate it. I appreciate, Marcy and you for being so great with allowing me to kind of share my story and hopefully provide some information that to get people out to more parks.
Definitely. It's very inspirational. So, okay. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.